All right, so today we're going to be diving into something I think we all struggle with, um, procrastination.
Oh, absolutely.
And we actually got some listener research sent in called Why Most People Are Stuck in a Cycle of Procrastination, analyzing the psychology behind it and how to break free.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to kind of deep dive into this and figure out why we do this and how to stop.
Sounds good.
Now, one thing I found really interesting right off the bat is this idea that procrastination is more about emotional regulation than laziness.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. I mean, procrastination is often a way of avoiding negative emotions. Um, if a task is making you feel anxious or fearful, your brain's going to want to just avoid it altogether.
So it's like a coping mechanism almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like, when it's a cold morning and you just want to stay in bed, it's comfortable in the short term, but
Wow.
eventually you have to get up and face the day.
Right. You can't avoid it forever. So, but avoiding the task, like you said, it doesn't make the negative emotions go away, does it?
No, not at all. In fact, it can actually make them worse. Because the longer you put something off, the more the guilt and anxiety build up.
It's like a cycle of avoidance then.
Exactly. And it can be really tough to break free from, but there's hope. This research also talks about something called cognitive distortions, which are basically thought patterns that contribute to procrastination.
Oh, that's interesting. Like what?
Well, one example is something called all or nothing thinking, where you feel like if you can't do something perfectly, there's no point in even trying.
Right. So you just don't even start.
Exactly.
Okay.
And another one is catastrophizing, where you imagine the worst case scenario.
Oh, yeah. Like if I spill a little bit of coffee on my desk, I'm getting fired.
Exactly. You're blowing things out of proportion and making them seem much worse than they actually are.
So these are all tricks that our brain is playing on us, basically.
Yeah, you could say that. And these distortions can really make it hard to get started on tasks.
Okay. And I know there's another one. It's the planning fallacy.
Oh, the planning fallacy. Yes. That's a big one. That's where we underestimate how much time something will actually take.
I do that all the time.
It happens to the best of us. And it often leads to us, scrambling at the last minute and feeling stressed out.
So we've talked about how procrastination is about emotional regulation, these cognitive distortions. But what about that feeling when you just can't bring yourself to do the task? Like, I need to work on this report, but that bag of chips is looking way more appealing right now.
Right. I think that's where dopamine comes in.
Dopamine.
So you know how our brains are wired for instant gratification? We love those quick hits of dopamine that we get from things like checking social media or, watching funny videos.
Scrolling on my phone. Yeah.
Exactly. But the problem is, those easy rewards can make it even harder to focus on tasks that require more effort and don't offer that immediate gratification.
So my brain is choosing,
Yeah.
scrolling over, finishing that report, even though it means stressing out later.
Unfortunately, yeah. Our brains are always looking for the easiest path to pleasure.
That makes sense, but it's also a little scary. Is there anything else in this research that talks about why we procrastinate?
Yes. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by a task and just kind of shut down? Like, there are so many things to do, you can't even figure out where to start.
Totally. It's like when I look at my closet and it's just overflowing with clothes and I end up wearing the same thing I wore yesterday because it's just too overwhelming to even think about dealing with it.
That's a great example. That feeling is called decision fatigue, and it can be a major driver of procrastination. Our brains get exhausted from making too many decisions, so we avoid making any decisions at all.
So it's like our brains are overloaded and you just need a break.
Yeah, it's like a self-protection mechanism.
So we've talked about emotional avoidance, cognitive distortions, instant gratification, and now overwhelm and decision fatigue. It's starting to feel like procrastination is this big, scary monster with like 5 heads.
Huh? Yeah, it could definitely feel that way.
Okay, so is there anything else we need to understand about this procrastination monster?
There's one more important piece. Self-efficacy.
Okay.
It's the belief in your ability to succeed at a task.
Oh, okay. So it's like if I think I can do something, I'm more likely to actually do it.
Exactly. But if you lack confidence, if you don't believe in your ability to get something done, you're much more likely to procrastinate.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely happened to me. If I don't think I can do something well, I tend to just avoid it altogether.
It's a natural response, and it can be really tough to overcome. But the good news is there are things you can do to boost your self-efficacy and break free from that cycle.
Okay, well, I'm definitely ready to learn about those strategies.
Me too.
Because knowing why we procrastinate is really interesting, but now I want to know how to actually stop doing it. So I'm really excited to dive into that.
Yeah, we'll get into all of that like right after this.
All right, so I'm ready to learn how to actually fight back against this procrastination monster.
Yeah.
What strategies does the research suggest?
Well, the first one might surprise you. It's practicing self-compassion.
Wait, so being nice to myself is going to help me stop procrastinating. How does that work?
Well, think about it this way. When we beat ourselves up for procrastinating, it just makes us feel worse, right? And those negative emotions, the guilt, the shame, they fuel the cycle of avoidance.
Yeah, it's like a procrastination doom loop.
Exactly. So instead of being so hard on ourselves, we need to practice self-acceptance.
So instead of saying, ugh, I'm so lazy, it's more like, hey, this is tough, but I'm working on it.
Exactly. And that shift in mindset can make a big difference.
Yeah.
It helps us approach those tasks with less fear and more like a sense of capability.
Okay, so we're being kinder to ourselves. What else can we do?
Have you ever heard of the salami technique?
The salami technique. No.
Basically, it's about breaking down a large task into smaller, more manageable pieces. Like instead of seeing this huge project, you see a series of little steps.
Okay, so it's like instead of trying to eat a whole salami at once, you take it one slice at a time.
Perfect analogy. And each small step you complete gives you a sense of accomplishment, which helps build momentum.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like checking things off your to-do list, but way more satisfying because you're actually making progress.
Well,
What other techniques are there?
Well, there's the 2-minute rule, which is super simple but surprisingly effective.
Okay.
If a task takes less than 2 minutes, just do it right away.
Oh, I've heard of that one, but it seems almost too easy.
I know, right? But think about it. All those little tasks that we tend to put off, answering a quick email, putting away the dishes, making a short phone call, those things add up.
And they create mental clutter, right?
Exactly. And that clutter can make us feel overwhelmed and lead to, more procrastination. So knocking out those tiny tasks immediately can really help to clear your mind and create a sense of, control.
Okay, I can see how that would be helpful. So we're being kind to ourselves, breaking things down, doing those quick tasks. This is starting to feel doable. Anything else we could do?
Well, remember how we talked about our brains loving dopamine? We can actually use that to our advantage by incorporating rewards.
Wait, you mean rewarding myself for not procrastinating?
Exactly. It doesn't have to be anything big. Maybe it's a piece of chocolate after you finish a chapter, or a 15-minute break to listen to your favorite music after you tackle a challenging task.
So it's like I'm training my brain to associate productivity with something positive.
Exactly. You're hacking your brain's reward system, basically.
I love that. It's like we're taking back control from those instant gratification urges. What else?
Well, another powerful strategy is time blocking.
Time blocking. I've heard of that, but I'm not sure I really understand it.
It's basically scheduling specific times for specific tasks. Instead of having this vague to-do list, you actually block out, say, an hour to work on that report or 30 minutes to clean the kitchen.
So I'm making appointments with myself for those tasks.
Exactly. And it can be really helpful because it creates structure and reduces the chances of, things getting pushed aside.
And if it's in my calendar, I'm way less likely to just blow it off, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. It seems much less intimidating than just staring at this, never-ending to-do list.
Right. And it helps prevent that feeling of overwhelm we were talking about earlier.
So we've got self-compassion, breaking things down, doing the quick tasks, rewarding ourselves, time blocking. This is really helpful.
I'm glad to hear that. There are a couple more strategies I think you'll find useful, especially given our conversation about perfectionism.
Oh, yeah. I definitely struggle with that one.
It's a common trap. But here's the thing. Striving for perfection often leads to procrastination because we're so afraid of making a mistake.
It's like I'd rather not do it at all than do it imperfectly.
Right. So instead of focusing on perfection, focus on progress.
So done is better than perfect.
Exactly. Embrace the idea that even imperfect progress is better than no progress at all.
Oh, that is really helpful. It's like giving myself permission to just get started.
All
Okay,
right.
what else? What else can we do to combat that perfectionism?
Have you ever heard of the Pomodoro technique?
Pomodoro technique. Yeah, I think so. It's the one with the tomato timer, right?
Yes. Basically, you work in focused intervals, usually 25 minutes, followed by a short break.
So it's like built-in breaks to prevent burnout.
Exactly. And those breaks are important. They give your brain a chance to rest and recharge, which can actually boost your productivity in the long run.
I like that. So we're not just powering through hours of work without stopping. We're like pacing ourselves.
Right. And that can make a big difference in your focus and motivation.
This is great. Okay, so we've covered self-compassion, breaking things down, doing the quick tasks, rewards, time blocking, embracing progress, and the Pomodoro technique. I'm feeling much more equipped to tackle procrastination now.
I'm glad to hear that. It sounds like you're building a really solid procrastination busting toolkit.
I am. But is there anything else we need to know before we, declare victory over this procrastination monster?
Well, there is one important thing. Sometimes procrastination can be a sign of something deeper.
What do you mean? Like, more serious than just feeling overwhelmed or distracted?
Yeah, sometimes it can stem from deeper emotional issues, things like fear of failure or imposter syndrome.
So it's like if you have a cough, it could be a simple cold, but it could also be something that needs medical attention.
Exactly. If you're finding that you're constantly procrastinating, even after trying all these strategies, it might be worth talking to a therapist or counselor.
Okay, that makes sense. Sometimes we need to address the root of the problem, not just the symptoms.
Exactly. And I think the most important takeaway here is that procrastination is not a character flaw. It's a common human experience, and it's something that we can learn to manage.
I really appreciate you emphasizing that. It's so easy to feel like we're the only ones struggling with this, but clearly we're not.
Not at all. And I think that's a really important message for anyone who's listening.
Absolutely. So what's the next step for our listeners who are ready to, actually start tackling their procrastination habits? So where do we go from here? Like, how do our listeners actually take all this information and turn it into action?
Well, the first step is just acknowledging that procrastination is something you want to work on. Recognizing that it's not really serving you and you're ready to try something different.
So it's like that moment when you say, okay, I'm done with this. I'm tired of feeling stressed and overwhelmed. I'm ready to take back control.
Yeah, exactly. It's that awareness that you want to make a change.
Okay, and then what?
Well, then it's all about experimenting with the different strategies that we talked about, and seeing what works for you because there's no one size fits all solution.
Right, it's like putting together a personalized toolkit.
Exactly. You pick and choose the techniques that resonate with you and kind of adapt them to your specific challenges.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about those days when, even with all these tools, we still find ourselves procrastinating? Because I know it's going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. It's not going to be perfect. It's like learning any new skill. There are days when you feel like you're making great progress and other days when you feel like you're back to square one.
So it's all about being patient with ourselves and accepting those setbacks as part of the process.
Exactly. And just keep practicing those strategies because the more you use them, the easier it becomes to overcome those urges to procrastinate.
That's like building those mental muscles, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like strengthening those neural pathways that help you stay focused and motivated. And that brings me to one final thought I want to leave everyone with. Think about one small task that you've been putting off.
You mean like something that's been on your to-do list forever,
Yeah.
but you just can't seem to get started?
Yeah, exactly. Now, what's one tiny step you can take right now to get started? Maybe it's just opening that email or gathering the supplies you need or even just writing down a phone number you need to call.
So it's like just breaking the inertia,
Yeah.
taking that first tiny step.
Exactly. Because you might be surprised by how good it feels to make even a little bit of progress. And that sense of accomplishment can often motivate you to keep going.
Yeah, it's like once you get started, it's easier to keep the momentum going.
Right. So take that step today. Because remember, understanding why we procrastinate is the first step to breaking free. And with self-awareness and a bit of self-compassion and the right tools, you can really start to take control of your time and your goals.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of procrastination. We all struggle with it, but we've learned that it's not a character flaw. It's something we can manage. So be kind to yourselves, experiment with the strategies we've discussed, and keep diving deep. Until next time.